Welcome to Connections, a podcast from the Graymere Church of Christ in Columbia, Tennessee. Our goal is to have discussions and messages that encourage us and strengthen our faith. We appreciate you joining us. Let's keep learning and growing together. Thank you for joining us for Connections, and we appreciate the chance to share some conversations that'll be spiritually encouraging, hopefully uplifting to us. And I'm excited today. Jon David Schwartz is back with us. I think you may have the record for most frequent guest on the Connections podcast. So this is pretty significant, right? It's exciting.
Shooting for it.
I've asked him to come and sit down with us, and we've talked a lot over the last couple of months about identity and about some of the things that kids are growing through as they grow up. And I thought this would be a good chance for us to talk a little bit about your role specifically in youth ministry and things that you've observed. And it'll be a good chance for those of us at Graymere to get a sense of what's going into and kind of behind the parts of the Graymere Student Ministry and different programs and ministries, but also just good for us to reflect on what our teens need that we can help give them as they grow spiritually. So we're just going to spend a few minutes talking about that. And I thought I would just ask maybe if you could share some of your philosophy of youth ministry or student ministry. When you think about youth ministry, what does that look like to you?
Man. Well, first of all, thanks for having me again.
That's right.
This is a big topic. I'll just go ahead and just to peel back the curtains. This has been as far as philosophy goes, it's way different than what it would have been for me when I was studying it in college or when I first got out. And I've been in youth ministry now for 23 years, and it has continued to evolve. But there's three passages that I kind of think of and that have become a part of my philosophy on youth ministry. The first one, and the reason I say it's evolved, there's probably a story somewhere in my career as youth ministry that helped shift a little bit of the way I do ministry, if that makes sense. And I don't have time to tell all of those stories, but, some of them might have been stories of frustration or discouragement. Some of them, a little bit more encouraging. And I got to see, God do something in a specific way that shifted the way I would approach different things, if that makes sense. Probably more often than not, my philosophy has shifted because of mistakes I've made as well. So I just say that on the front end to also say, my philosophy is not perfect. You ask any youth ministry their philosophy, youth minister their philosophy in youth ministry, and there's going to be different variations. But I think the one thing that we all try to do is to get back to the word in some fashion. So here's mine. All right. Without reading the whole chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul is dealing with division in the church, and then also the understanding of the foolishness of the cross versus the wisdom of the world. And this was one of those foundational shifts for me, where early youth ministry, the philosophy was kind of get people to show up for the fun stuff and the entertainment and introduce Jesus. The problem is that with that is you can very easily miss out on who Jesus is if you're trying to invite teenagers to the fun stuff, right? But one of the things that he says in verse 23 is, we preach Christ crucified. And without going into the whole story, I just remember a moment where I was thinking, man, I've got the calendar set and I've got some really neat things going on, but I still feel like we're missing it. What are we missing? And I think what we were missing is not because I wasn't teaching the Bible, but because of the emphasis on our programming. I think I was failing to bring Jesus into the focal center of ministry. And so to me, that's step one. Anything we do in our youth ministry here at Graymere is going to start with an introduction to Jesus. And I'll just tell you, it might be a little bit more quote unquote boring, to those who are on the outside and the way that other churches do things. And I'm okay with that. I'll just be honest. I don't feel the need anymore to think that I need to make Jesus more attractive than he already is, or to try to dress him up. I think teenagers just need to know who Jesus is. And so I'm just going to teach and preach Christ crucified. That's kind of my first step of a philosophy. The next one is, and I want teenagers to know this from the moment they start stepping into the youth group, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but right now I'm getting to spend time with our new sixth graders. We have a sixth grade transitions group, and that means that they are transitioning out of elementary school, and for a year, they're getting prepared to move into our student ministry. They're not necessarily ready to be with 12th graders, but they're also tired of being with kindergarten through fifth graders. They're just kind of in that middle spot. But even in that young age, I want them to understand that they have a place in the church. And so this has always been one of my philosophical passages, so to speak. Let no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity. Show yourself an example of those who believe. And one of the things that I want teenagers to know is that if you're a part of the church, from the day that you put Christ on in baptism, it doesn't matter if you're 10, 11, 12, it doesn't matter if you're 18, 38, 78, you are an integral part of God's kingdom. And so part of my philosophy is I want you to plug in. I want you to be useful. I want you to be active. And that doesn't just mean showing up and having fun at events. That means being involved on mission trips and in our into the city ministry. It means that you're going to have opportunities to lead and to serve in different ways. And then my kind of final or third passage, if you will, as far as an overall philosophy, is from Titus 2, where it talks about the older men and women helping teach and shape the younger men and women on what it looks like to be Christ-like and to be involved in God's kingdom. And so, there's no moment where adults and especially parents aren't invited to be a part of our youth program. I want our teenagers to be impacted and to see the models of good men and Christian women. Yeah. And so we've, a lot of our programming is centered on that idea. So that's kind of my philosophy in a nutshell. I know that was a long answer.
No, that's great, because I think it's important to see that focus. And you mentioned how easy it is to get maybe distracted from having the focal point being Jesus. And that may sound hard. I'm thinking about some people listening might say like, well, how could that happen? But there are a lot of ways that could happen. Yeah. And so what have you tried to do maybe to guard against that? Or there specific things you've said, hey, I want to make sure in making this choice, we're kind of keeping that focus?
Yeah. I think early on for me, it was the pressure of having a calendar that looked really good. You know what I'm saying? And when I say that, not like, I would try to put pictures on the calendar and dress it all up. And, I'll pass out the summer calendar every year and I'll still try to make it, something that they want to look at and know what's going on. But when I say attractive, it's like, I felt like I needed to show the congregation where I was working that, man, we're doing stuff all the time. So, man, we'd have 3 or 4 things a week. And what I realized is that we're not necessarily growing from those things. We're just doing things, Yeah. And some of those things were spiritual. Some of those things were fun. But it was just go, 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 go. And because of the busyness, I think there were moments where we missed out on just the depth of who Jesus is. It's real easy sometimes to turn any event into just a gathering. I do think there are times for that. One of the things that I enjoy doing with our teenagers is what we call our Christmas extravaganza, and it's just 2 days of us having fun together. And I think that's important because I want our teenagers to understand that you can have joy and happiness and have fun in life and it not it not coincide with the world's idea of fun.
Yeah.
We can go, we can play video games, but we're not having to worry about language, that you're having to deal with at school or whatever else. And you're enjoying fellowship with other Christians, right? So there are those moments, but for the most part, I think the older I've gotten, the more I've learned that a full calendar doesn't mean beneficial all the time. Columbia is one of the busiest cities I've ever been in as far as opportunities that kids have all the time, from sports, school, extracurriculars. I've got teenagers that are, that go to the dance academy down the road. We've got, drama kids and chorus and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the worst thing for me to do would be to try to just start adding stuff every night of the week. So one of the things that I've tried to do is make sure that I'm utilizing our Sundays and our Wednesdays in the best way possible for our teenagers. And so I've, I guess personally, I've tried to keep the calendar a whole lot more open, but then make sure that the moments we are together are way, way more beneficial and relevant, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us can relate to the sort of creeping in of all kinds of other obligations and things in life, but that's especially true for teenagers. It just seems like more and more of their time is demanded of them. And you mentioned capitalizing on what we're already doing, like Sunday nights and Wednesday nights. And one of the ways we do that is with the 1-2-10 ministry that just kind of got cranked back up.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about that and sort of what the goal is for that and what you've seen in the last few years.
Well, that kind of is that is born out of, we call it 1-2-10, and it's intended to be a mentoring chain, if you will, where we have adults, then we have upper class teenagers and lower class teenagers, grades, not second, not tiers of citizenship.
Upper class.
And the idea is that the adults are mentoring the teenagers, but then also the older teenagers have an opportunity to mentor younger teenagers and learn how to look out for them. That was actually born out of the idea of Titus 2, the older teaching the younger, but also our purpose statement in our Graymere Student Ministry comes from Romans chapter 12, and specifically verses 1, 2, and 10. And so I'm just going to read those. I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. And then verse 10, be devoted to one another in brotherly love, give preference to one another in honor. And one of the versions, I don't remember which one, but it says, outdo one another in honor, and that is where our 1-2-10 mentoring program comes from, is kind of those matching of passages. The goal is that we're learning how to live the way Jesus wants us to live together. And what's really neat about that is, every Sunday night we start out worshiping together, all kind of tucked towards the corner, so that everybody can see our monitors and we can worship and pray and sing together. But then we split up, and our teen girls are partnered with their female mentors, and our teen guys are partnered with their male mentors. And that's when they get to really dig in. We always have, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes if we need it, of prayer time and catching up and what's going on in life. What do you need us to pray about? We have a real neat prayer map. I kind of stole the idea from Philip Jenkins, but then we made it our own. And I asked the kids to give some of their ideas, but it's places on a map that help you kind of pinpoint, okay, I'm at Joyful Springs right now. Things are really good. I'm in a good place. Or, I'm in the valley of despair. Like, things just are not good. they're tough. Lonely Island, I'm just feeling left out. Different places like that kind of help categorize what we're going through, but also kind of catapults the prayer opportunities. Why are you there? What's putting you there that we can pray about? And then we'll jump into the Bible and give opportunities for both the adults and the teenagers in each group to talk with each other about the scriptures that we're reading. So it's not just me teaching all the time, but they're interacting and talking about, their own insights. And that, I think it's a really neat opportunity for our teenagers to learn from our men and women in this church who not only love them, but love the Lord even more and want our teenagers to understand that life. It's been a really neat thing for me to watch, and the relationships being built, which is cool.
Well, it's awesome to see just from kind of afar, just to notice conversations that happen with adults and teens that are in the same group. And so that goes through the school year. So they stay in the same group from like beginning of school year till end of school year.
Right. And even my goal, every year or two, we probably have to shift some grades depending on numbers of teenagers and how many we've graduated or and the genders, how many we have coming in or going out or whatever. But one of my goals is to also keep them with those mentors through high school.
Yeah.
And so we do have, most of them have been with the same mentors now for our upperclassmen anyways, for the last 3 or 4 years, which gives to even deeper relationships, hopefully, or at least that's the plan. So
absolutely.
It's pretty neat.
Well, and it's just so encouraging to think about when they graduate, that it won't just be the youth group they've got that close connection to. Like they've got connections to Christians, kind of all across the age spectrum that they feel plugged into as well. One of the things too, you mentioned that goes on Wednesday nights and also during the school year, is really a chance not only to have our teens learn, but also to do some hands-on ministry, which as a parent, I've really appreciated that and getting to talk to our sons about those experiences. So tell us a little bit about ITC.
Yeah. ITC is our Into the City ministry. And again, it was born, I failed to mention this earlier, Romans 12 and our purpose statement, lifting up the Lord in worship and service and lifting up others in love, came from teenagers within the first year and a half that I came to Graymere in 2016. Our Into the City ministry is also born out of some of that same group of teenagers who said, we need to be about doing the work of the church. And, without going through the whole story, it kind of got kicked off, or the idea was kicked off in a mission trip that we did in Chattanooga. We brought it back here, and it became our bus ministry on Wednesday nights. And we go into the community, and our goal is to pick up pick up kindergarten through 12th graders who want to come learn about Jesus. And that's been a really neat opportunity. Your boys are obviously involved in it. My 2 children are involved in it. And, as a parent, you mentioned the blessing of getting to watch them and have those conversations. It was awesome for me to watch my daughter also gravitate towards that. And then not just want to be over there with those little kids. And I'll explain a little bit how we've got it set up, but then also say, Dad, I'm riding the bus with you tonight. And that was really cool. Yeah. And so what we do on Wednesday nights is we go pick the kids up in the neighborhoods where we run the buses. We bring them back. And at 6:30, all of our children and teenagers are in classes, and these children are as well. And we sing songs together. Right now we're teaching them the books of the Bible. We've got a deal with them that if they can say the New Testament books, they get a candy bar. If they can say the Old Testament books, they get 2 candy bars. And if they say all 66, they can get 5 candy bars.
Right.
Just some incentive. Maybe you guys at home could work out that deal with your parents, but
right.
We're trying to teach them as much of the basics that our kids have gotten growing up in the church and learning that. We're walking them through the story of the Bible and God's creation and God's working with the people that he created. We want them to know how much Jesus loves them. And a lot of that is also just borne out in the hugs and the time that we get to spend with these kids. And, and like I said, that was born out of, the enthusiasm of that mission trip and those teenagers that were on that. And so, teenagers are very vital to this program. They're the ones over there helping mentor. They're passing out snacks. They're helping with crafts. I get boys up there, leading the prayers and helping lead the songs. And they're helping teach the classes, things like that. Even our sixth graders, they're not necessarily in our student ministry yet, but on Wednesday nights, they're over there with, our bus ministry and the learning center so that they can make friends with those current sixth graders.
Yeah.
And then move into the youth group together. And what's really cool now is that we've got our very first boy who ever rode the bus as a kindergartner is in 7th grade with us in the YAC.
Oh, wow.
Which is really neat.
That's awesome.
And we actually have 5, 6, 7, or 8 teenagers that are with us every single Wednesday night because of the relationships that they've built with our teenagers. And that's, it's neat to watch and to know what God has done through our teenagers, and to watch them learn and develop and be blessed by a joy of ministry and just the simplicity of just teaching other people that Jesus loves them. It's been really neat.
Well, that's a great experience for them, not just to, as you mentioned, the temptation that exists for both youth ministry and just ministry in general, kind of an attractional model where we come as consumers. I think that's a temptation that we face in all aspects of ministry. But to have something like that where, hey, you're taking action, you're doing something, you're producing some effort, some ministry that others can benefit from. One of the things too, I thought, and I know this is something that more people will hear than just Graymere members, but I thought it might be good for you to touch a little bit on some of the things you might talk about to the 6th graders in that transitions group as they're getting ready for the youth group and expectations, maybe some things you share with parents to say, hey, be ready for this, and this is what to plan for.
Well, and again, like I said earlier, every youth minister is going to have their different philosophy and how they approach things differently. So what I'm about to mention are just things that I feel like are valuable and things that I try to instill in our kids. Matter of fact, we've just finished walking through Romans chapter 12, and I've had the opportunity for the last month really to talk to our 6th graders about, Jesus calling on their life, their opportunity to be involved in the church, where it talks about if you serve well, if you love, love well, things like that. And so one of the things I want the kids to know is, okay, here's a life that's not in the world, but is transformed to look like Jesus. You have the opportunity to impact people even as a 6th grader right now. So we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about learning how to get along. I think that's a big deal. Teenage years are filled with drama, and one of the things that I try to I'm not good at this all of the time, and there's probably been moments where I handled it very poorly, but one of the things I want our teenagers to learn how to do is you might not like somebody for a little while, or you disagree with them, or you had a fight or whatever, but we're all part of the same church.
Yeah.
We got to learn how to get along. That's being a part of the church and learning how to honor each other in love. Then there's some other just little practical things, that, I think are valuable. Bible classes, I encourage our kids and I beg our kids. And so maybe parents could hear this and help instill this. Don't bring your cell phone to class and think you're going to use your Bible on your cell phone. I want you to bring your paper Bible. And I think there's value in getting away from all of the distractions that come through a cell phone And also the memory aspect of learning where to turn in a Bible helps you visualize on a page things that you might need to know down the road. I think that's important. And so that's, I don't know if I call it rules or guidelines, but that's the way it works in my classes. You're putting your cell phone up and we're getting our Bibles out. I have tried to instill in our teenagers that, I don't want you to just come to the yak and everybody be showing up and you're just sitting over there on your phone either. So our yak is now a cell phone free zone, as much as possible. And the reason is I want you to cherish relationships with each other more than likes or dislikes or social media stuff. I tell parents this pretty early on. I'm going to expect a certain level of behavior from our teenagers when we go somewhere. If it's an area wide, if we're worshiping at another church or at a youth rally, I'm going to expect our teenagers to be the example of what it looks like to be involved in worship. And to not be goofing off. If we go to a restaurant somewhere, I want our teenagers to know that we're not the only ones in that restaurant. And so we better respect everybody else in the restaurant, just simple things like that. Sometimes maybe this is a goofy thing, but hey, if we're having food in the yak, our girls are going first. They're just certain things. Some of them might be quirky, but some of it too, I think is teaching that idea of love and honor for other people, that it talks about in Romans 12. So those are some of the things that I really try to key in on and things that I want our teenagers to know, and that I would want parents to know. And I would also invite parents, if you're ever curious about what we're doing, man, come join us. There's never a class or a time that we're together as a youth group that I'm ashamed of what I'm teaching or what, there's nothing that I don't want you to see. So come check it out for yourself,
Well, and even mentioning that reminds me that not this week, but I believe it'll be next Wednesday night for our Kingdom Focus Wednesday, we'll have a chance to see what the kids are learning in ITC and have a big combined class in the fellowship hall, which is always a lot of fun, but it's also just really encouraging to see folks, because not everybody, if not all of us are involved, we might not know how many people are being reached or what all's being taught. So that'll be a really good chance for people to make those connections and be able to see that for themselves. Any other sort of thoughts as we wrap up, thinking about parents that are preparing children for the youth group or want to support student ministry? What are things that parents can do that would be the most helpful for you?
Man, anytime I get asked this, I think number one is just involvement. I think we don't realize, or maybe we even take for granted, that that our children are going to be what we are. And that means that if we're involved in the church and we're excited about the church, that they're going to be involved and excited about the church. And so my first thing to parents is always, if you can be involved and drag your children to everything that you can. And I'll say this, you might echo this, I don't know, but I even remember moments where my parents would make me go to something and I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And I look back on that now and I don't regret that. I'm not angry about it. It's one of those things I'm thankful for, because it instilled with me, not that I'm going to have fun every time, but here's what devotion to Christ looks like. And here's what it looks like to learn how to get along with people and to learn how to, appreciate the church and God's kingdom. Yeah. And so to me, the number one thing is involvement. You may think you don't have a place in the youth group, or as a parent, you don't know what to offer. I'll just tell you this. If you show up, for instance, we've got our fall retreat coming up November 7th, 8th, and 9th, for our 7th through 12th graders. I would love it. I know that's not possible, but if every teenager that came had a parent representative, you might feel like there's nothing for you to do, but you're there. Mm-hmm. And it might be that you set out 2 chairs, we're getting ready for worship, or it might be that you help serve drinks, or it might just be that you're hanging out with kids, but that those teenagers are seeing adults who in their minds, their hearts, and their actions are saying, this is important to us. Your spiritual growth and maturity is the most important to us as parents. It really goes a long way in our children's minds. So that may be oversimplified, but I think that is the biggest thing.
Well, and I think in experience, being a parent who's been able to do that on retreats and other events, the experience for the parent too is so powerful, because not only does it give some insight into the work that goes into youth ministry, but also you get to see kind of in real time what your kids are learning, and just get a sense, even if you're not, sitting by them every session, get a sense of what's happening. And so when you have later discussions, you can touch base on, hey, what'd you think about this? Or kind of where are you on that? And that provides some really good moments for conversation.
Yeah.
So that's great. Well, I appreciate you joining us and sharing this. I hope it's been encouraging. I know it has been to me, because we're thinking about ways that we can provide opportunities that could affect teens for the rest of their lives, that could have such a huge impact. So I appreciate that so much. Appreciate everyone for joining us. And you can like and subscribe, and all the things you're supposed to do for podcasts to get this to continue to grow. We also hope that if you're listening to this and you're in the Murray County area and you don't have a church home, we'd love to encourage you in any way possible. You'll always receive a warm welcome at Graymere. Or if you have any questions, connect with us and contact us. Above all, we just want to have an encouraging conversation that can uplift you spiritually. We hope this has done that, and we appreciate you joining us on Connections. Thank you for being part of Connections. We hope it was an encouragement to you. If you live in the Columbia area and don't have a church home, we would love for you to worship with us. You can find out information about meeting times, classes, and what to expect at graymere.com. You will always receive a warm welcome from the Graymere Church of Christ.